At 18, my stepmother sold me to the disabled Alpha King, all to save my stepsister's life. She wrapped her thin cloak tighter around her shoulders, though it did little to shield her from the chill. At 18, she had learned to endure discomfort quietly, though the events of the past few days had made endurance a bitter companion. Inside the house, her stepmother's voice rang out like steel striking stone. "Alara, come here this instant." Alara's heart sank. Every command from Lady Maurice, her stepmother, carried the weight of a threat, even if unspoken. She had long stopped expecting warmth from the woman, though she had once tried, as a child, to earn her affection. That was a long time ago, before the shadow of her stepmother's ambitions had fallen over their lives. Inside the drawing room, Lady Maurice sat in a high-backed chair, her fingers drumming against the carved wood in a rhythm that made Alara's skin prickle. Beside her, Lyanna, her delicate stepsister, lay on a chaise, pale and frail. Her small chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. "Look at her, Alara," Lady Maurice said, her voice soft, almost deceptively gentle. "Your sister needs help. The healers cannot reach her. The curse, it is growing stronger. But there is a way." Alara's stomach tightened. She had feared this moment, though she did not yet understand its full weight. Lady Maurice leaned forward, her dark eyes gleaming. "There is only one who can save her." Alara hesitated. She had heard whispers in the village about the Alpha King, Kaelin, who ruled the northern lands. He was said to be fierce, commanding, and broken. Rumors spoke of his strength, but also of a curse that had left him crippled, confined to a chair of blackened iron and stone. People both feared and admired him. "Who?" Alara asked, her voice barely a whisper. Lady Maurice's lips curved into a thin smile. "The king himself, but he only takes what he desires most, and he has no love for those who come willingly. You will be his gift. Only then will he lift the curse from Lyanna." Alara felt the words hit her like ice water. What do you mean?" "You will go to him," her stepmother said, each word precise, measured, cutting through the quiet room. "He will demand your service, your presence. And in exchange, your sister's life will be spared. Do you understand?" Alara's mind raced. She had grown up in the comfort of a noble home, though comfort had been sparse in affection. She had read about kings and their demands in books, always in stories, never imagining the cruel reality. She wanted to shout to refuse, but the sight of Lyanna's pale face, lips tinged blue from fever, held her in a grip she could not escape. "Yes, I understand," she whispered. Lady Maurice's expression softened for a brief moment, an illusion of care that Alara had learned to recognize. "Good. There is no time to waste. The king waits for no one." The journey north was harsh. The land became rugged, mountains cutting into the horizon like jagged teeth. The sky seemed perpetually gray, and the wind carried whispers of sorrow and danger. Alara rode in silence, the words of her stepmother replaying endlessly in her mind. She had been chosen, sold, though the word never left her lips. She had been offered as a lifeline for someone she loved, yet she felt the bitter sting of betrayal. By the third night, she arrived at the castle of King Kaelin. It was a fortress of black stone, rising from the cliffs like a sentinel of despair. The wind screamed through the towers, and the gates, tall and iron-bound, loomed above her like a challenge. Kaelin awaited her in the grand hall, seated on a throne of dark marble and iron, his frame strong despite the way his legs folded beneath him. His presence was impossible to ignore, commanding, yet there was a quiet vulnerability in his posture. His eyes, sharp and piercing, studied her with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. "You are the girl," he said, his voice deep, low, carrying a weight of authority and isolation. "Your stepmother's offer is unusual." Alara bowed, trying to keep her voice steady. "My lady, my stepmother, I am here to serve you as she promised. Please save my sister." Kaelin's gaze hardened. "Do you understand the cost of this bargain?" Alara nodded. "Yes, your majesty." He leaned back slightly, and for the first time, Alara noticed the subtle tremor in his hands, the tight line of his shoulders. The stories she had heard of him were true, yet incomplete. The man behind the throne was more than the tales. He was human, broken in ways the world rarely saw. "Very well," he said finally. "You may remain, but know this, the castle is no gentle home. It will test you as I will. You are not here as a guest. You are here as a part of a living, breathing storm. Survive it and you may find your purpose. Fail and the world will not weep for you." Alara's heart pounded. The weight of the castle pressed down on her, the shadows stretching like long fingers across the marble floors. She followed silently as Kalen rose, his movements deliberate, measured, the faint sound of leather boots on stone echoing in the empty hall. Days passed. Each day was a test, though not always of strength or skill. Kalen observed her, often silently, sometimes with words that cut through pride or fear. He demanded obedience, yes, but also courage, intelligence, and wit. He challenged her to think, to act, to endure. Alara learned to navigate the castle's labyrinthine halls, where the shadows seemed almost alive. She learned which whispers in the corridors were truths and which were lies. She learned the names of those who served Kalen loyally and those who sought to use her for their own gain. Through it all, she could not ignore the pull she felt toward the king. Not love, not yet, but fascination, curiosity, and the strange warmth that came from shared struggle. Kalen, for his part, began to see her not as a bargaining tool, but as something more, someone capable of challenging him, of standing in a world where most bowed or fled. One night, the wind howled like a chorus of lost souls, rattling the windows of the castle. Alara wandered the hallways, drawn by a strange intuition, when she found Kalen standing alone on a balcony, looking out at the cliffs below. "You wander the halls at night," he said without turning. "Why?" Alara hesitated. I cannot sleep. The castle, it feels alive. And I feel small in its shadow." Kalen finally turned, his gaze softening ever so slightly. "The castle does not forgive weakness easily. Neither do I, but you endure. That is rare." Their eyes met, and for a moment the world narrowed to just the two of them, the wind and the darkness outside fading into silence. Alara wanted to speak, to bridge the distance, but the fear of overstepping, of offending the king, held her tongue. "You will need courage," Kalen said at last. "More than you imagine. You will face storms within and without. The castle will test you, the world will test you, and I will test you as well. But perhaps you will survive them all." Alara's chest tightened, not with fear alone, but with a strange mix of longing and determination. She had been sold into this life, forced to endure trials she had never imagined. Yet in the king's presence, in the shadows of the castle, she felt a spark, fragile, flickering, yet unyielding. The next morning, Kalen summoned her to the great hall. "There is more to this place than stone and shadow," he said. "There are forces here, old and relentless. Some seek to protect, some seek to destroy, and one of them will come for you." Alara's heart skipped. "Who?" "That is for you to discover. The castle tests all who enter. You are no exception." As she left the hall, a shiver ran down her spine. The walls seemed to close in around her, the whispers of the past brushing against her ears. She realized then that survival would demand more than obedience. It would demand courage, cleverness, and the strength to confront not only the world, but herself. And somewhere deep inside, she felt the stirrings of a bond she could not yet name, something that was both fear and fascination, resentment and respect. A bond that she feared could change everything. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of blood and fire, Alara stood once more at the balcony, staring at the jagged cliffs and stormy sea. The path before her was uncertain, dangerous, and cruel, and yet, for the first time, she felt ready. The castle had claimed her, the king had claimed her, and in the shadow of the northern lands her journey had only just begun. The castle never slept. Even in the dead of night, The corridors whispered secrets, shadows shifted, and the cold stone walls seemed to watch Alara's every step. She had begun to understand that survival here required more than obedience. It demanded attention, intelligence, and courage. It had been a week since her arrival, and already she felt the weight of the castle pressing against her chest. The grandeur of the halls, the carved statues, and the towering windows offered no comfort. They were reminders of the power that ruled these northern lands, and the man who wielded it. Kalen had been observing her closely. Every day, he tested her with subtle challenges, questions that seemed simple but carried hidden traps, tasks that required wit rather than strength, and moments of quiet scrutiny that left her feeling exposed. Sometimes he offered praise, a rare and fleeting acknowledgement, but often his approval was silent, a glance that could chill her or warm her, depending on the moment. Alara had learned to read those glances. One evening, as a storm raged outside, she found herself in the library, a massive room of towering shelves and flickering candlelight. The scent of old parchment filled the air. It was quiet here, a rare respite from the constant demands of the castle. Kalen appeared behind her, silent as the shadows themselves. "You read far too much," he said, his voice low, carrying the weight of authority. Alara jumped slightly, spinning to face him. I seek knowledge. It helps me understand this place. And perhaps it will help me serve you better, your majesty." Kalen's dark eyes studied her for a long moment. "Knowledge is power," he said finally, his tone softer than usual. "But do not mistake it for protection. The castle has its own will. It tests those who enter, rewards those it favors, and discards those who falter." Alara swallowed hard. The castle had already begun its tests. Hidden stairways, locked doors, shifting shadows that seemed alive, all reminded her that nothing here was simple. "You are stronger than you know," Kalen continued, stepping closer. "But strength is not measured in muscle alone. It is measured in courage, in restraint, in the ability to endure the unbearable and still rise." Alara felt a shiver run down her spine. His words were a challenge, but also a promise. The promise that if she survived, if she endured, she could become more than she had ever imagined. In the days that followed, Alara began to explore the castle more boldly. She discovered secret corridors, hidden gardens, and rooms locked away for centuries. She realized the castle was alive with history and magic, its walls holding echoes of kings past and whispers of long-forgotten curses. One afternoon, while walking along the battlements, she heard a faint cry from below. She peered over the edge and saw a shadow move quickly across the courtyard. Her heart raced. The castle was full of people, but few moved with such stealth. Kalen appeared silently beside her. "You see it too," he said, his gaze following the shadow. "Do not fear it. The castle tests all who enter. Some challenges are visible, some hidden." Alara nodded, trying to steady her racing heart. I will be careful," she said. Kalen's eyes softened just for a moment. "Careful is not enough. You must be alert and you must trust your instincts, but also you must trust yourself. That is the hardest test of all." That night, the castle's walls seemed to close in around her more than ever. The wind howled through the towers, carrying with it a coldness that felt almost alive. She could not sleep. Thoughts of Kalen, of her stepsister, of the bargain that had brought her here, spun endlessly in her mind. Unable to rest, she wandered the halls again. This time she found herself in a smaller chamber she had not noticed before. The room was dark, but a single candle flickered on a desk, illuminating old manuscripts and a large, leather-bound book. Curiosity drew her closer. As she reached for the book, a soft voice startled her. "Do you seek knowledge or understanding?" She turned sharply and saw Kalen standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. I was curious," she stammered. "This room, it feels important." Kalen stepped into the room, the shadows moving with him. "Everything here is important, but not all knowledge is meant to be uncovered by everyone. Some truths are dangerous. Some change the person who learns them. Alara hesitated. I want to learn. I want to help. I want to understand you, your majesty, and the castle, and everything. Kalen's eyes softened, and for the first time he seemed almost human. You have courage, he said quietly, and a mind that does not bend easily. That is rare. Most crumble under the weight of this place. He handed her the book. Then begin, but be warned, some lessons are harder than any battle. They will test your heart, your loyalty, and your very soul. Alara accepted the book, her fingers brushing against his. A spark of something, fear, respect, fascination, passed between them, though neither spoke of it. Over the next few days she pored over the book in secret. It spoke of old curses, of the lineage of kings, and of powers that flowed through blood and will. She began to understand the true nature of Kalen's curse. It was not merely physical. It was tied to his family, to the throne, to the very land he ruled. And breaking it would require more than strength or magic. It would require sacrifice, courage, and the willingness to confront one's deepest fears. Kalen watched her work in silence, sometimes guiding her, sometimes allowing her to struggle alone. Their relationship began to shift, from one of distant formality to something more complex. She saw glimpses of the man beneath the king, a man of intelligence, pain, and unspoken longing. He saw her not as a pawn, but as someone capable of standing beside him, of challenging him, even if she did not yet know it. One evening, a strange event shook the castle. A section of the northern wall had collapsed during the storm, revealing a hidden passage leading into the cliffs. Kalen and Alara explored it together. The passage was dark, damp, and filled with strange echoes. At the end, they discovered a small chamber, illuminated by a faint, unnatural light. Inside, a stone pedestal held an artifact, an orb of dark crystal, pulsing with energy. As Alara approached it, the air seemed to thrum with power. She could feel it pressing against her mind, teasing her thoughts, whispering secrets she was not ready to hear. Do not touch it, Kalen warned, his voice firm. Some things are not meant for the living to command. But Alara's curiosity overcame her fear. She reached out, and the moment her fingers brushed the orb, a shock of energy surged through her, throwing her back against the wall. Kalen was at her side instantly, catching her before she fell. What did you feel? He asked, his eyes dark with concern. I don't know, Alara whispered. It felt alive, powerful, dangerous. Kalen nodded, his expression grave. The castle is full of such things, some protect, some destroy, and some test those who are brave enough or foolish enough to face them. Alara shivered. She realized that every day here was a lesson, every shadow a challenge, every glance from Kalen a test of more than obedience. She was learning not just about the castle or the king or the curse, but about herself, her courage, her resilience, and the strength she did not know she possessed. As they left the chamber, Kalen spoke quietly, almost to himself. You are stronger than I expected. And yet, you have only begun to understand what lies ahead. Alara looked up at him, sensing the weight behind his words. She wanted to ask what he meant, but the look in his eyes stopped her. It was a warning and a promise. The castle had more trials waiting, and the bond between them, strange, fragile, and dangerous, was only beginning to take shape. That night, as Alara lay in her chamber, she thought of her sister, her stepmother, and the bargain that had brought her here. Fear gnawed at her, but beneath it was a spark of determination. She would survive the castle. She would endure Kalen's tests, and she would uncover the secrets that might save not only her stepsister, but the man who had begun to occupy her thoughts more than she dared admit. The storm outside raged on, lightning flashing across the darkened sky, thunder shaking the walls. Alara stared out the window, watching the shadows dance across the cliffs. Somewhere in that darkness, the castle's magic stirred. And somewhere within her, a new strength was awakening. She did not know what awaited her, more trials, more danger, more secrets, but she knew one thing with certainty: she would face them all, and she would not face them alone. The castle had claimed her. The king had claimed her, and in the shadows of the northern lands, their fates were now bound together in ways neither of them fully understood. And yet, even as the wind howled and the shadows shifted, a quiet question lingered in Alara's heart. Could she truly trust the king? Or would the castle's darkness consume them both before the answer could be found? The wind had died down, but the storm left the northern lands shrouded in mist. The castle sat like a dark sentinel on the cliffs, its black stone glistening with rain. Inside, silence hung heavy, broken only by the faint echo of footsteps on stone floors. Alara moved carefully through the halls, clutching the leather-bound book Kaelin had given her. Its pages were filled with knowledge of old curses, bloodlines, and powers that no ordinary human should ever seek to understand. Yet she could not stop reading. Each word seemed to call to her, revealing secrets about the Alpha King, the castle, and the forces that shaped their world. Kaelin followed her silently, as he often did. He seemed less a shadow in the halls now and more a presence, a constant reminder that she was never truly alone here. And yet, there was always an edge to him, a sharpness that reminded her that his favor could turn as quickly as the winds outside. "You have been here long enough to begin to see the truth," he said, his voice low, carrying the weight of authority. "The curse that binds me is not just my burden, it is the burden of the throne itself." Alara nodded, careful not to speak too quickly. "I am beginning to understand, but I still do not know how it can be broken." Kaelin's eyes darkened. "Few do. The curse is older than any living memory. It is tied to the land, the bloodline, and the mistakes of kings long past. To break it requires more than power. It requires sacrifice." Alara's heart tightened. She had already given so much, her freedom, her safety, her life in her homeland, for her stepsister. And now she realized that breaking the curse could demand even more. Yet she also felt something stir within her. Determination, courage, a spark of defiance that had been growing since her arrival. That night, the castle felt different. The shadows seemed to stretch longer, the corridors twisting in ways they had not before. Alara wandered, guided by instinct, until she found herself in the northern wing, a place Kaelin rarely visited, where the air was thick with old magic and the whispers of forgotten kings. A sudden movement caught her eye. From the darkness emerged a figure, cloaked and silent. Alara's breath caught. She recognized the subtle shimmer of enchantments woven into the stranger's robe. "You are far from the warmth of the hearth," a voice said, soft but commanding. Alara stepped back. Who are you?" The figure lowered the hood, revealing a woman with eyes like polished obsidian, sharp and calculating. "I am one who knows the castle well," she said, "and I have come to warn you. The castle tests all who enter, but some tests are fatal." Alara's pulse quickened. "Why me?" "Why now? Because you are more than a pawn," the woman replied. "You carry the spark that can change the course of the king's fate and the curse that binds him. But beware. Those who wish the throne ill will not stop until every obstacle is crushed, and you may be the first." Before Alara could ask more, the woman vanished, leaving only a faint echo of her words. Alara's mind raced. She had known the castle was dangerous, but now she understood the depth of the threat. The enemies were not only outside, they were inside, hidden in shadows, waiting for the wrong moment to strike. The next morning, Kaelin summoned her to the council chamber. The nobles were assembled, their faces a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Some whispered openly, others masked their intentions behind polite smiles. "Your Majesty," one of the older nobles began, bowing low, "we hear of new disturbances in the northern lands. Rumors speak of forces rising that may challenge your rule." Kaelin's gaze swept across them, sharp and unyielding. "Rumors are only dangerous if they are believed," he said. "And yet the northern lands are restless." "Alara," he said, turning to her, "you will accompany me. You must see the forces we face with your own eyes." Alara's stomach tightened. She had expected tests within the castle, but now Kaelin spoke of journeys, of dangers that lay beyond these walls. She nodded, though fear clung to her chest like iron chains. The journey north was grueling. The roads were slick with rain, the cliffs treacherous. Kaelin rode with a careful strength, his body still affected by the curse but his mind sharp and commanding. Alara followed, keeping pace, her hands clenched around the reins. As they approached the edge of the cursed forest, the air grew thick with mist and the scent of decay. Shadows moved unnaturally among the trees, and strange sounds whispered through the air. Kaelin dismounted, moving silently to a large boulder. "The curse reaches far beyond the castle walls," he said, his eyes scanning the darkness. "These lands have long been touched by the remnants of ancient power. Many who enter are lost and few return unchanged." Alara swallowed hard. "And we must face it," Kaelin nodded. "Yes, there is knowledge here that is crucial. The forces at work are tied to the curse. To break it, we must understand it." They stepped into the forest, and immediately the world seemed to shift. Trees twisted unnaturally, roots writhing like serpents, the fog curling around their ankles like living tendrils. The forest was alive, but not in a gentle way. It observed, tested, and whispered secrets that tugged at the edges of the mind. Alara felt fear rising, but she also felt a strange thrill. Every step forward was a challenge, and every challenge tested her courage. Kaelin moved with a grace she had not expected, his eyes sharp, his instincts precise. Yet she noticed moments where he faltered, where the curse reminded him of its power and his own vulnerability. They reached a clearing, and there, at the center, stood a figure draped in shadow. It radiated power and menace, and the air itself seemed to tremble. "You have come," it said, voice echoing through the mist. "The girl and the king." Kaelin stepped forward, his presence commanding. "You will not harm her," he said. The shadow laughed, a sound that made Alara's blood chill. "She is but a pawn, but she is special. She may survive if she proves worthy." Alara felt the weight of those words. The shadow was testing her, as Kaelin had said. But this was different. This test carried real danger. She looked at the king, seeing the tension in his shoulders, the sharpness of his gaze. And then she understood something crucial. Kaelin had trusted her to stand beside him, not behind him. Summoning every ounce of courage, Alara stepped forward. "I will not be a pawn," she said, her voice steady despite the fear twisting her stomach. "I will face whatever comes, and I will not fail." The shadow seemed to shift, its form wavering as if surprised by her resolve. "Very well," it said, voice softer, almost intrigued. "Then you may proceed, but know this. The trials will not end here. They are only beginning. The curse is patient, and it will not be broken easily." Kaelin moved to her side, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. "You have courage," he said quietly, "and that courage may be the key." Alara looked at him, her chest tight with emotions she did not yet fully understand. Fear, respect, fascination, each mingled with something deeper, something that had been growing since she first entered the castle. She did not know what it was, and she was not ready to name it, but she felt it. They spent hours in the clearing, navigating the traps and illusions the shadow conjured. Every moment tested their minds, their instincts, and their trust in one another. And slowly, Alara began to understand the depth of Kaelin's struggle. He was not only a king bound by curse and duty, but a man who had lived in isolation, who had built walls around himself stronger than any stone in the castle. By the time they returned to the castle, the sky was painted with the first hints of dawn. The storm had passed, leaving the land wet, cold, and glistening in pale light. Alara was exhausted, her body trembling, but her heart felt a strange triumph. She had faced the shadow, and she had survived. Kaelin walked beside her in silence, his gaze occasionally meeting hers. When they reached the castle gates, he spoke softly. "You have done well," he said, "and yet the path ahead is longer, darker, and more dangerous than anything you have faced. Do you understand that?" Alara nodded. "I do, and I will not turn back." Kalen studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he said quietly, "Good, because the curse will demand more from both of us. And I will need you by my side not just for the challenges, but for the choices we will be forced to make." Elara felt a chill, not from the cold but from the weight of his words. Choices, sacrifices, trials. She realized that their journey was no longer only about survival. It was about understanding, trust, and the strength to confront darkness, not only in the castle, not only in the lands, but within themselves. That night, as Elara lay in her chamber, she reflected on the day's events. The shadow, the forest, Kalen's words, all left her mind spinning. She felt a bond forming, fragile yet undeniable, between herself and the king. A bond built not on fear or obligation, but on shared struggle, courage, and the quiet understanding that they were now linked by fate in ways neither could escape. And somewhere deep inside, a question lingered, one that would not leave her alone. Could they truly survive the curse, the castle, and the shadows that lay ahead, together? The castle was silent, but the walls held secrets that would not remain hidden for long. The North had a way of testing those who dared challenge it, and Elara knew that the next trial would be even greater, even more dangerous, and far more revealing of the truths that bound them all. She closed her eyes, summoning the courage that had carried her through the shadowed forest, and whispered to herself, "I will not fail, I will not falter, and I will face whatever comes by his side and with my own strength." For in the darkness of the northern lands, Elara had begun to understand something profound. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to face it. And the bond between her and Kalen, the fragile, dangerous, compelling bond, was something neither the castle nor the curse could deny. The castle was quieter than it had been in weeks. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, as if the walls themselves were waiting for something. Elara moved through the halls, her steps measured, her mind sharp. The trials of the shadow in the forest, the cursed northern lands, and the dangers of the castle had changed her. She was no longer the frightened girl who had been brought here against her will. She was a young woman who had begun to understand courage, trust, and her own strength. Kalen awaited her in the great hall, his expression unreadable, yet his eyes carried the weight of concern. He had returned from the northern border only hours earlier, where reports of strange disturbances had reached him. Nobles whispered of treachery, and the castle seemed to hum with a quiet unease, as if sensing the storm yet to come. "Elara," he said, his voice calm but firm. "The time has come to face what we both know cannot be ignored. The curse, it will demand more from us. And the stepmother who sent you here, her ambitions are not finished." Elara's chest tightened. She had known this moment would come, but knowing did not ease the fear that pressed against her ribs. "What must we do?" she asked. Kalen stepped closer. "We must confront the source of the curse, the shadow that haunts this castle, and the forces that would use it to destroy us both. And you must stand with me, not as a pawn but as an ally, a partner, a force strong enough to challenge the darkness." Elara nodded, determination shining in her eyes. "I will stand with you, whatever it takes." That night the castle seemed to awaken. Shadows shifted unnaturally along the walls, whispers echoed in the corridors, and the very air felt charged with magic. Kalen led her to the throne room, a vast chamber of black marble and flickering torches. At its center, the remnants of the curse manifested as a swirling darkness, a living shadow born from centuries of pain, betrayal, and unbroken ambition. "You face more than the shadow," Kalen said quietly. "You face all the fear, all the anger, all the loneliness that has built itself into this curse, and it will not yield easily." Elara stepped forward, her heart pounding. "I understand, and I will not falter." The shadow reacted instantly, its form shifting and stretching, reaching out with tendrils of darkness. It moved like a living storm, its voice a chorus of anger and despair. "You dare challenge me," it hissed. You dare bring your strength, your will, your fragile hearts against centuries of power. Kalen raised his hand, commanding, but his voice was steady, tinged with something Alara had not heard before: hope. We do not fear you. You are not the master of this land. The castle belongs to those who fight for it, to those who endure. And we endure. The shadow recoiled as if surprised by the defiance, then surged forward. Alara felt a cold grip on her mind, images of failure, loss, and despair flashing before her eyes. She stumbled but did not fall. Kalen's hand found hers, steadying her. His touch carried warmth, strength, and a silent promise: we face this together. You are stronger than you realize, Kalen whispered. Hold on. Alara took a deep breath, centering herself. She remembered every trial, every challenge, every moment she had faced the darkness. She remembered the forest, the shadow that had tested her courage, and the trust she had built with Kalen. The fear remained, but it was tempered by something far more powerful: resolve. The two of them advanced together. Kalen struck at the shadow with bursts of energy drawn from his bloodline, his body moving with a strength that belied his disability. Alara followed, using her knowledge from the ancient texts to anticipate the shadow's attacks, to shield them, and to exploit the openings Kalen created. The battle was exhausting, a clash of light and darkness, of courage and fear. Every strike, every movement demanded precision, trust, and unwavering focus. The shadow lashed at them with fury echoing centuries of hatred, yet Kalen and Alara moved in unison, their bond growing stronger with every moment. At last, the shadow faltered. Its form splintered, and for a brief instant it seemed almost human, a reflection of Kalen's own fears and regrets. You will not win, it whispered, voice trembling. Kalen's eyes softened, filled with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. We already have, he said. Because we do not fight for power alone. We fight for trust, for courage, for what is right. Alara stepped forward, placing her hands over the shattered darkness. Light surged from her, not from magic, but from courage, from love, from the bond she and Kalen had forged. The shadow screamed, then dissolved, leaving only silence and the faint scent of rain and stone. For a moment, neither of them moved, breathing heavily, hearts pounding. The castle seemed to exhale, the walls returning to their calm, watchful stillness. The storm had passed, and the northern land seemed to glow with a fragile dawn. Kalen turned to her, eyes searching hers. You have done more than survive, he said quietly. You have given strength to the curse that no one else could. And in doing so, you have changed everything. Alara felt tears prick her eyes, but they were not tears of fear. They were tears of relief, of triumph, of something deeper she had not dared to name. We did it, she whispered. Together. Kalen's expression softened further. Yes, together. The next day, the court gathered to witness the new dawn. Nobles whispered of the shadow's defeat, of the strange bond between the king and the young woman who had come from afar. Lady Maris, Alara's stepmother, was summoned, her ambitions revealed and exposed for all to see. She had hoped to control Kalen, to manipulate the throne from behind the scenes, but her plans had failed. Alara watched quietly as justice unfolded, not with cruelty, but with the fairness and wisdom that Kalen demanded. After the court dispersed, Kalen led Alara to the balcony overlooking the northern cliffs. The sky was painted with gold and pink, the sun rising over a land that had endured so much darkness and now found hope. You have grown, Kalen said softly, not just in courage but in heart. You have faced shadows both within and without, and you have not faltered. Alara looked at him, her chest tight with emotion. I could not have done it without you. You taught me courage, trust, strength. You showed me that even in darkness there is light if we dare to reach for it. Kalen's hand found hers once more. This time it was not a gesture of command or guidance, but of connection. And you have taught me that even a king bound by curse and duty can find trust, can find hope, can find something worth protecting beyond the throne. Alara felt a warmth spread through her chest, a fragile, radiant glow that chased away the shadows of fear she had carried for so long. "We face the future together," she said. Kalen nodded, his expression solemn but filled with quiet joy. "Together," he agreed. For the first time, the castle seemed not a prison but a home. Its walls, once oppressive, now felt protective. Its shadows, once threatening, now seemed to dance in celebration of the courage that had endured, the trust that had been forged, and the bond that had been sealed through trials and sacrifice. Alara and Kalen stood side by side, gazing at the rising sun, each aware of the journey that had brought them here. They knew challenges would come again, enemies, shadows, and the burdens of rule, but for now they had survived. They had triumphed, and they had each other. In the quiet of that dawn, the kingdom seemed to breathe anew. The curse was broken, the shadows defeated, and a new chapter had begun, not only for the land and its king, but for the young woman who had walked fearlessly into darkness and emerged transformed. Alara turned to Kalen, her voice soft yet steady. "The castle, the curse, it changed us, but it also taught us something powerful, that even in darkness, courage and trust can light the way." Kalen smiled, a rare, gentle smile that reached his eyes. "And in that light, we are stronger than any curse, any shadow, any force that would seek to divide us." For the first time, they allowed themselves a moment of peace. The bond between them, forged in trial and tempered by courage, had become unbreakable. The castle had tested them, the curse had challenged them, and the world beyond had threatened them. But together, they had endured. And as the sun climbed higher, painting the walls of the castle with golden light, Alara realized that this was more than survival. This was redemption. This was hope. This was a beginning. Hand in hand, they faced the kingdom, the future, and the countless mysteries yet to come. And in that moment, the shadows of the past could no longer reach them. For in courage, in trust, and in the bond they shared, Alara and Kalen had found something far greater than victory. They had found each other. And that, above all else, was a power no curse could ever take away.